Hello everybody, this is Gregory with How I Lost Over 100 Pounds and Kept It Off for 30 plus years, where there should be no hesitance in your weight loss and weight maintenance. Now, today we're going to talk about probably the most important reason why you've had weight issues, and this is childhood trauma. Now, before we begin, if you need help with weight loss, there is a link for Clarity FM in the episode notes if you want to schedule something. Also, check out my 2 podcasts that I've had since 2017. There's a lot of content there that might be useful to you. And also there's some other links in the episode notes that might be useful to you. All right, so look, am I saying that everybody who's overweight has had childhood trauma? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, like the first episode I did on the number one thing you must do to have weight loss and weight maintenance, which is fundamentally changing your paradigm. I believe a lot of the efficacy of weight loss and weight maintenance stems from psychological. Because we all know how to lose weight. Like, we all know how we're supposed to eat. It's not some Rosetta Stone that we need to decipher the hieroglyphic. It's not that at all. We all know what we're supposed to do. Don't drink your calories, eat your vegetables, stay away from processed food, move the body. You know, it's not rocket science, right? So the question is either why didn't we do that when we were younger, if you were a child, obese child like I was, or if you gained the weight in your adulthood, why didn't you do it during that time? I mean, we all know what we're supposed to do, but we lapsed. And I would tell you that a lot of it has to do with childhood trauma. I'm not saying in all cases, but in many cases. And why do I say that? Well, in adolescence and in childhood, those are formative years, clearly. And a lot of our psychological and psychosexual development occurs during that time. So if there's some sort of trauma that occurs during your formative years, I mean, this could be as early as being an infant all the way to, even as an adult, you suffer from some adverse childhood trauma, an ECT. This can affect behaviors that you develop later on. So what do I mean by early childhood trauma? I mean, the obvious ones are going to be physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, having parents that had substance abuse or drug abuse problems, perhaps being in a traumatic car accident where you saw your sibling have its head chopped off, some sort of PTSD. I mean, there's a lot of different forms of early childhood trauma. And I'll talk about my first Confessions of an Obese Child episode on that playlist, what mine was. But there's something that happened that threw off your, in this case, relationship with food. Look at a child who's 3, 4, 6, whatever. They only eat when they're hungry. And then they stop eating, not when they're full, they stop eating when they're no longer hungry. So when you put food in front of a toddler, they're not binge eating to the point where they're vomiting. They're just almost like a dog in low-level Maslowian hierarchy of needs. I'm hungry. It's all instinct. I'm hungry. Give me food. I'm no longer hungry. I'm going to go play. So something happened in childhood that made you, in this particular case, seek food as your comfort. For some people, it's not going to be food. It's going to be maybe alcohol later on, or porn later on, or compulsive shopping for women in particular later on, or trichotillomania, trichotillophagia, onychophagia, anxiety disorders. You know, there's tons of things. Or some sort of psychiatric problem. A lot of psychiatric problems come from early childhood trauma because something is thrown off. So instead of having an ordered view of food, you have a disordered view of food, a dysfunctional view of food, which could have started at a very early age. So if some of you were childhood obese people like I was, you had trauma. And then food is the most readily available thing for a child. It's not going to be booze. Hopefully it's not going to be booze. So it's going to be food, and what are you doing? You're numbing the pain. You can't deal with whatever the trauma is. Your parents are going through a divorce, you hear them yelling, whatever it is. There's a myriad of things. So you feed yourself because it numbs the pain a little, right? So you have a disordered relationship with food that starts at that age. Now, for those of you who maybe gained weight in your adulthood, it could be childhood trauma that was sublimated throughout your adolescent years, and maybe throughout your adolescent years, the release or the manifestation of that early childhood trauma could have been self-gratification, it could have been self-mutilation, it could have been nothing, it could have been promiscuity, it could have been a host of things in your your early adolescent, late adolescent years, and then for whatever reason, as you become an adult, then you turn to food and alcohol. And of course, we know alcohol is just a waste of calories, not to mention the way alcohol is metabolized by the body leads to fat storage. So with some of you who were regular weighted in high school and in your early 20s, you let go, whether you're a man or a woman, and you started eating too much, drinking too much, and that could result in it. And look, sometimes it's just as simple as, it's not early childhood trauma that was sublimated throughout your adolescent years. It could have just been once you were an adult, maybe you went through a rough patch as your adult, or maybe you did have some sort of PTSD or whatever it is, and then you just start turning to the booze and you start turning to the food because we know they put a lot of additives in food. Food's readily available. Food is very cheap. And same for booze. If you have kind of a tendency from your early age, perhaps you had an alcoholic parent, lots of alcoholic people had alcoholic parents, and some turn away from alcohol like I did, and some don't. But either way, it could be something like that. But understand, the simple point is this. There are people in your life, whether adult or children, who have an ordered relationship with food. They eat when they're hungry, they stop eating when they're not hungry. Not because, there's this mindset, we got to eat till we're full. No, that's a disordered view of food. Now, eating, no, we don't necessarily see that because we live in a world that tells us to be gluttonous. But gluttony is one of the 7 deadly sins for a reason. But there are people, and I would tell you, children are the best example of this because they haven't been vitiated yet by the tumultuous kind of pangs of life. Whereas if you look, very young kids are just like, give me my goldfish, give me my applesauce, and then I'm gone. Now, if you don't have that, it's because something happened to you and you've just been so used to and so inured into this is a normal relationship with food, which is essentially binge eating or eating till I'm full, that you think it's normal. So I would tell you, really look into your childhood. Some people are very introspective, don't have a problem looking into their childhood. Some have a major problem with it and are in massive denial. So either way, I would tell you, more often than not, if you suffer from obesity, there's some childhood trauma that's lurking there that you just haven't resolved. And I would tell you, with all charity, to look into it, do the deep work, and resolve it. Because it's like water filling a boat. Right? And you could be paling out the water, but until you fix that crack, all you're going to do is it's just short-term remedies, right? You're just going to be binging, crash dieting, diet, calorie in, calorie out, calorie in, calorie out, and you're never going to really end that. And so the best way to have an ending to that is go back to wherever the trauma was and fix it. And that way you'll have a better chance of having an ordered view of eating. I'm not saying that even if you figure out what happened, maybe you have some deeply resolved trauma that happened to you and you go to a therapist and you figure out what it is, doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be like, no, I just eat until I'm no longer hungry. But you have a better chance of getting to that if you address the childhood trauma. So whether it be going to therapy, and look, therapy is one of the easiest things now post-COVID is that you can do it online, and there are food specialists, addiction specialists. It's not an excuse. I mean, there are affordable things. If it means talking to your pastor, talking to your priest, talking to a friend, something, journaling, I would tell you is a great thing. But I would tell you that I would really recommend that you do talk to a professional about your childhood trauma, because you want somebody who can navigate you through this, somebody who has the skills to navigate you through this. And I would tell you, just like the first video, changing the paradigm's key. And part of changing the paradigm for weight loss and weight maintenance is you got to fill up those holes where the water's coming in. And more often than not, those holes are from childhood trauma. So please get those resolved. Guys, post in the comments if you're very open and honest about your childhood trauma, if you think that led to your disordered view of eating or maybe some sort of trauma, post in the comments. And I'll have a video upcoming that talked about my personal experience with this. Hit the notification, subscribe, and share button and share with others. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.